And so you want to buy hard assets. You want to invest in companies that are looking for metal, because going forward, we're in an entirely different universe with commodities. Oil, gas, uranium, copper, lithium, gold, platinum, palladium, nickel. We're coming into a big crunch, and it's time to back up the truck, as Keith would say, Keith Neumeyer. And I agree with his view of what's going on out there.
Today's guest is a supporting sponsor of Liberty in Finance. Welcome back to Liberty in Finance. We're delighted to have this returning guest who has a new role and a new company. Patrick Donnelly is the president and CEO of E79 Resources, a gold exploration company focusing in Australia. He joins us this Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. Pat, thanks for coming back on Liberty in Finance.
Thanks for having me on, Donegan. Good to see you again.
I was delighted to hear about your new and exciting opportunity set that this exploration affords you. And I wanted first, on behalf of our viewers who often are seeking real and solid assets to help reduce risk to their family's future, in a sense, we're all seeking to reclaim real solid treasure because we are trying to protect the fruit of our labors throughout our working lives and put them in something that can be a treasure storehouse for ourselves, for our family, for future, whether it's for emergency, urgent needs that may come up, our own needs, or whether it's just a special opportunity that may arise. But you yourself, as a professional treasure hunter, wanted to ask you your path, if you could give us a glimpse very briefly into what was your path to becoming a professional treasure hunter.
You know, I've always liked being outside, and I've always been fascinated by mineral deposits and gold and precious metals and searching for them and prospecting for them. And so that led me to, doing a geology degree. And, most people know me as, either an executive or capital market specialist, but I spent the first 10 years of my career as a field geologist and had the opportunity to work, all over the Canadian North, all over British Columbia, Yukon, Nunavut, Ontario, mostly looking for gold. And it's always been a fascinating thing for me. And grassroots exploration is kind of my bread and butter and something that I've always been fascinated about. And, even though now I'm more of the executive role, I still get excited about, as you said, treasure hunting and looking for really interesting gold deposits. And there hasn't been any major discoveries in the last, 10, 20 years. And yet the demand for metals, whether it's precious metals, base metals, uranium, lithium, what have you, the demand is at all-time high. And so, but like I said, I still like getting back to my roots as an exploration geologist looking for precious metals.
It's interesting what you mentioned about the imbalance of supply and demand going forward. We've done a number of interviews, as you're aware, with Rick Rule, formerly of Sprott Asset Management, and we did a combined panel interview with him and Keith Neumeyer from First Majestic Silver. The title of that interview turned out "Massive Metal Shortage Coming," because Rick had pointed out, as you did, that there just simply has been a multi-decade dearth of exploration and discovery and development, the industry going through a big consolidation, cost-cutting, belt-tightening, all kinds of measures that basically have resulted in a lack of new discoveries. And in the face of, as you mentioned, burgeoning demand from the electric economy, et cetera, coming forward, just absolutely requiring new supplies of all of these strategic metals. And in fact, some of the geopolitical stresses that we've been observing over the past, say, 2 to 3 years, where for the past several decades, North American industry thought it was brilliant to offshore, outsource everything overseas, especially to Asia, suddenly rethinking that strategy given lockdowns and restrictions and shipping problems and everything in that region, or originating from that region, and political strife and tensions and that sort of thing, tariffs, et cetera, thinking we better secure some more North American-centric management of and access to some of these strategic resources. So the idea of a North American company, E79 Resources, that you're representing, doing exploration in a less contentious geography and jurisdiction, then makes sense in terms of being able to have more availability of some of those strategic materials that the people are going to be needing in North America in the next decade. You have a new story to tell that we've never heard before. E79 Resources is a new company, and you're the new CEO, and would really love to know what was so compelling about that opportunity, that set of opportunities that drew you to that new role, why, and what is it about it that you think that prospective investors need to be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, this is a story I never even heard of before until they approached me. And what really drew me is they've already had exploration success. And exactly a year ago, they hit one drill hole. They're focusing on, they have two assets in the state of Victoria in Australia. And people who don't know much about Australia, it is a very, very strong mining country. I just got back a couple of weeks ago. I'd never been there before. And it's interesting. Australia reminds me a lot of Canada. Canada, is a big mining country. A big part of our economy, big part of our culture is mining. And Australia is very, very similar that way. And also politically, it's very similar to Canada. And so what drew me is, one, it's a great jurisdiction. It's very, very pro-mining. It's a very, it produces a lot of iron ore, it produces a lot of gold, uranium, coal, nickel, and mining is in the blood of Australia. And then what really drew me to this company, again, they have two assets. One's called Myrtleford, the other one's called Beaufort. And specifically, the Myrtleford project, it's a massive land position. And it's in the middle of the historic Victoria. The state is called Victoria. It's in the middle of the historic Victoria goldfields. And so in the late 1800s, there was a massive gold rush in the area. And in the Myrtleford area, they pulled out over 5 million ounces of gold from alluvial workings. So basically old river channels where you had gold mineralization that was eroded off and shed off the local hills and mountains and deposited in these valleys. And they pulled out 5 million ounces of gold. And the gold, and then when they finished going through the alluvial stuff, they started chasing the source of that, and they're mining these multi-ounce high-grade veins. And they were basically using buckets, pickaxes, and shovels. And then when World War I came about, Australia, all the men left to fight, and they never came back to go back in these gold fields. So you got this area like Myrtleford, it's cranked up 5 million ounces, and this is all the easy stuff. The question is, where did that come from? And this area has never had any systemic modern exploration since World War I, over 100 years ago. And you go to Myrtleford, there's trenches, there's adits, there's workings everywhere. And so one area in Myrtleford, well, two areas we're focusing on, but one area we're focusing on, Happy Valley, we drilled 10 meters at 160 grams of gold. And since then, we've been drilling at Happy Valley and pulling out numerous holes with high-grade gold. And we're just wrapping up the current season there. And Happy Valley is just one of dozens of areas where there's been historic multi-ounce mining. And these old-timers, they only mine to the water table. They mine about 20, 30 feet in depth. And then they hit the water table because they're all doing it by hand. And so there's been no drilling, none. And yet there's all these working showings, there's mineralization everywhere. And this reminds me of a few other stories like this. For example, Kaminak Gold, which was acquired by Goldcorp for $500 million, and that's in the Yukon near the historic mining district up there, up near Dawson City. And again, that was the source of some of that gold in the historic Dawson area. And so you got all these historic workings. Where's that gold coming from? And we're hitting it with these drill holes. So, this fascinated me because there's been no modern exploration. There's gold everywhere. We have no problems finding gold. The goal now is to quantify it, to build it out, and to see where this mineralization goes. And this is a story, it's highly undervalued. We got lots of money. And the other thing is Australia is cheap to work in. All our exploration costs in Australian dollars. We're not having any fly caps. We can drive to our project from the local town. So it's just, the infrastructure is incredible, very supportive state, a country that has a long mining history, and it's stable. As you alluded to, Dunnigan, the world is getting very, very difficult to mine. It's incredible the amount of political instability and political instability in countries that produce metal, whether it's in Africa or Latin America, Asia. It's very, very difficult. And where do you want to go? Places like Australia, Canada, the United States. You want safe places, and Australia is definitely up there. Australia always ranks in the top 2 or 3 globally as the best places to mine, and you want to go places where you're welcome. So it's a tremendous opportunity. We got $7 million in cash, Canadian, and Australian dollar. You think Canadian dollars are funny money, and Australian dollars are really, really funny money, and so we have an exchange rate advantage there. It's got tremendous workforce, people there. It's the culture there is mining and geology. So we have our VP of exploration, Shane Mealy. He's a local. He's from there. All our geologists are Australian, and so it's just we got the right people. We're financed, and like I said, we got these huge land positions in these Australian gold fields. The other thing I would note, one other thing I learned when I was a young geologist, there's a saying: the best place to look for a mineral deposit is within the shadow of a headframe or within the shadow of a mine. And what really got this area excited, there's a mine called Fosterville. And Fosterville's been owned by a number of different companies, and it was kind of a crappy asset for years. And then a company called Newmarket Gold acquired it, which was subsequently acquired by Kirkland Lake Gold, and now it's owned by Agnico. Fosterville was a very challenging metallurgical deposit. It was underground, open pit. It was running about 4 grams. Well, in 2016, they discovered a mine within a mine. That's what I call it. They just discovered an entirely new zone called the Swan Zone, multi-ounce coarse gold. Same geology as we have, and same type of mineralization as what we're seeing. And the Swan Gold, multi-ounce, I think it's got about 2 or 3 million tons running an ounce per ton. It is now one of the highest grade, most economically profitable mines in the world. And we're in its backyard. So again, we got these large land positions, gold everywhere. We're finding gold, and the country is very supportive in the shadow of a head frame. And so when I saw this opportunity, I'm like, this is a good story. This thing has legs. I want to be a part of this. And, we met before when I was at Trilogy, which is a fantastic company with a world-class asset. And I like exploration, and I like good jurisdictions, and I like gold. And that's why I made the switch. And it wasn't taken lightly, but I just thought this was an opportunity that I had to take. And so far, it's been very, very interesting. And I was just down there, and I walked the ground, and I was astounded, there's so many areas to drill. There's so much low-hanging fruit. And that's what we're doing right now, and that's why I really like this story.
It sounds like you've painted the picture of a very promising and, in some cases, proven jurisdiction. What are the specific areas within that E79 has exclusive access to?
Well, we have 100% of the Myrtleford project, and it's 40 kilometers long. It's a massive land position. And within Myrtleford, there's 2 areas we're drilling. One is Happy Valley. That's where most of the news has been coming from. That's in the southern part. And as I mentioned before, 10 meters of 160 grams, which is a screaming drill hole. And then we're currently just wrapping up drilling there. And then we'll go back there in a month or 2. And also the other area to the north is Twist Creek. And hopefully we'll have some news on that pretty soon at Twist Creek, because we've been drilling there. And I don't want to say too much, but what I've seen so far is very interesting. So again, and there's another area called Magpie, and it's got numerous showings, trenches, adits, all with historical gold production. But what people don't realize is we're about a 2-hour drive from Melbourne. The city of Melbourne was built on gold. The construction of the city was financed with gold from that gold rush. All the towns in this area were built on gold. And that was all the stuff that was just, sloughed off the mountains, but nobody's ever found the sources of these gold. So again, this is a very rich gold mining region. We're focusing on Myrtleford, and then to the east, we have our Beaufort project, which again, I just walked the ground 2 weeks ago. There's numerous adits, trenches, showings, workings. Again, picking away at the surface, picking away at veins, but not going very deep, only going maybe 20, 30 feet below. And then they hit the water table and walk away. And again, nobody went deeper to chase this gold. And so again, virgin territory in a great jurisdiction. And again, as I said before, in a shadow of a headframe with a world-class Fosterville mine.
For prospective investors who are considering whether or not they want to consider investing in E79 Resources, what is a realistic progression of events that you are expecting? If you look forward over the next quarters and years, what kind of a timeline do you envision unfolding? I know that part of the discovery process is there's surprises involved, so there's unpredictability around that. But what is the direction and what is the goal in general for your company? Is it to actually create resources and then develop them, or is it to then sell them off, or is it to potentially become a valuable takeover buyout target of a larger corporation who could develop those resources?
Right now, the goal is, we're drilling these areas to discover more gold, and finding one of these areas where there's some continuity with this mineralization and build out a resource. That's the goal. So right now, like I said, we've had some good success so far at Happy Valley. We're trying to chase that mineralization, see where it goes. It's open to depth. It's partially open along strike. And so the goal is to see if that builds out into a resource. The next area, again, Twist Creek, we only just started drilling it a month ago. Not one hole has ever been drilled there, ever. And so I think it was in April we started drilling there. And so the goal is to find another one of these areas that contains gold and drill that out and build ounces. Ultimately, the long-term goal is to add lots of ounces. And then we can decide, and then at that point, we probably take it to, try to do some economics on it, right? Either a scoping study and then bring that all the way up to a feasibility stage, which will take a couple of years. So there is tremendous interest from other mining companies. They like the area. They like the fact that we're hitting gold. A buyout is possible. But, my view is there's value through the drill bit. And that's a pretty common term you hear in these circles. And the other value proposition I bring up, there's a gentleman, I'm sure, again, your clients and listeners have heard this one before. There's a gentleman named Pierre Lassonde, and he came up with the Lassonde curve. And the Lassonde curve shows the lifespan of a junior mining company and where the best place to invest is. And it's not in economic studies or feasibility studies or permitting or development. It's at the discovery stage. That's where you get the bang for your buck. And let me put it this way. This company ran up, when they made this original discovery, it ran up to $1.50 Canadian. They did a financing at $1. And then when I joined, it was at 60, 70 cents Canadian. Right now, we're at 20 cents. Our market capitalization is about $12 million Canadian, and we have $7 million in cash. So we're trading more than half cash. I don't know if this share price can get any lower. And matter of fact, I've been going into the market. So you mentioned Keith Neumeyer, and I know Keith very, very well, and I work for Keith, and I have tremendous respect for Keith. And one thing I learned from Keith is when your share price is under pressure, then you pull out your wallet. And so I've been coming in and buying stock. Whenever there's weakness in the share price, I pull the trigger. So I've been slowly picking away at the share price. When I see the share price go down, I start buying more. I'm going to keep buying more. And so we're trading at 20 cents Canadian. We got 7 million, our market, we got 66 million shares outstanding. And so it's a 12 million market cap, $13 million market cap Canadian, which is tiny, which is nothing. And we have 7 million in cash. And we can make that last and do lots and lots and lots and lots of drilling with that. So that's the value proposition for your people, for your clients. And yet, just over a few months ago, we were at $1 Canadian. So, again, it is exploration. It is risky, but at the same time, there's the upsides unbelievable. And we got some good shareholders like Eric Sprott in there. He put in a few million. We got Frank Holmes. He's in the story. I'm sure you know Frank, US Global. He likes the story. And so, the upside is just tremendous. And I think there's a tremendous entry point right now, given the share price. And I just started with the company. I only started about 2 months ago. This is my first interview I've ever done. And that's why I called you up, because you're the guy that I think can, get the story out. And I think, your clients would find this an interesting investment. And it's in precious metals, which I think we need precious metals now more than ever. And you mentioned that, you mentioned about the lack of discoveries. Well, the reason there's lack of discoveries is because, when I was a young geologist, mining companies used to do their own exploration. They used to have big exploration teams. And then their philosophy changed in the late 1990s, where they didn't do that anymore. When things got tough, the first thing they did was cut their exploration teams. And most major mining companies now don't have exploration teams. You know who does the exploration? Little tiny junior companies like us. And they tend to have more success because they're willing to take more risks. They're more entrepreneurial. They're more aggressive. And so we do all the exploration. But on the other hand, that's why there hasn't been any major discoveries, because the big companies don't put money into the ground anymore. And as you alluded to, when they do need assets, they just go out and buy them. And so, this is a tremendous opportunity, I think, for your shareholders. I think we're in very unusual times. I've been in the metals markets now for over 30 years. My father was a miner. He worked up in all these mines as running the large shovels and trucks and everything. And what we're seeing right now in the metals markets is unbelievable. Regardless of what's going on in the global economy, if you don't have enough of something, then you don't have enough of it. And that's with all the metals. And so you want to buy hard assets. You want to invest in companies that are looking for metal, and because you can't go wrong. Because going forward, we're in an entirely different universe with commodities: oil, gas, uranium, copper, lithium, gold, platinum, palladium, nickel, you name it. And I used to be a sell-side analyst. I worked in Toronto as a sell-side analyst, and I've been following metals for a long time. We're coming into a big crunch, and it's time to back up the truck, as Keith would say, Keith Neumeyer. And I agree with his view of what's going on out there.
Yeah, that seems to be the emerging consensus among many close analysts of the natural resources investment space, is that this sort of a coming crisis in shortfall of supply of some of these strategic materials is going to really be felt. And when it gets felt hard on prices, and it affects that dramatically. At the same time that the currencies are being debased, et cetera. So it's going to be kind of I guess you could call it a perfect storm. Whether you consider that good or bad, it's going to be dramatic and affect all of that supply-demand dynamics for these strategic materials, and it's good to be positioned ahead of that rather than wait for people to wake up to that. Also, as we've seen the major equity markets, the stock markets, churning and rolling over and having the worst first half a year in the U.S., at least for the past 50 years, there are many large pension fund owners and other investors who need to get return. They need to look for areas of what's going to be on the winning side for the next decade, since it doesn't look like necessarily that the same market-leading segments for the past decade are going to be the ones that are going to be carrying the ball forward for people who need looking for return. And the natural resource space is a natural fit, no pun intended, for those large investors that are looking for what's next. So you don't want to be in or behind the rush into that. You want to be ahead of it, as Rick Rule always tells us. Either be a contrarian or be a victim. So we're grateful to have you here. If people want to find out more specifically about E79 Resources, we'll put a link to the company's webpage in the description of this video. Any other specific tips for people who want to find out more about E79 Resources?
Yeah, absolutely. And people can reach out to me directly, Patrick at E79resources.com. And, we can follow the link. And, we'll be on again with Dunnigan and tell you about, we'll have some news and we'll give an update on what we're doing. We got lots going on and we're busy in Australia. And like I said, the fundamentals for gold and other precious metals is very, very strong.
We've been speaking with Patrick Donnelly, the CEO and president of E79 Resources. Patrick, thank you for coming this first time under this new flagship leadership role at this new company. And as you mentioned, we'd be delighted to have you back to give us updates on the discoveries and news flow as you have it, giving our viewers and our subscribers a good context within which to gain confidence in the direction this company is heading. And just thank you for joining us here on Liberty and Finance.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.